Generally, I find the REW multi-tone generator. That's what it is there. I've got my earplugs in because that tone, if you don't put earplugs in, it can be really a bit disorientating. To sort of use multi-sine wave tones and do it in real time with the microphone placed close to the screen. It's usually when it's placed a little bit further back. Any sort of deviation going this way, that way, forward, backwards, up, down, the whole waveform on the where is it? Turn the fader up. Turn the fader up. Still a little bit out in the upper highs, but I've got plenty of gain level and amplifier power, and it's a sort of case of either taking down the other tones when they already got PEQ filters on them. Look at the bands. This is a 1/12 octave, 48. I'm using 48 up here. If I change it to 1/12, it'll change to that scale. You can see some of the bands are still out of position because speakers are not perfect. So I'll just put that back to 1/48, and it gives that shape. I've got the smoothing on 1/12. If I go to 1/48, it'll look like that. Not that I've got a problem with that. I'll just put it on 1/12. If I put it on 1 octave smoothing, it gives that shape characteristic. Yeah, it's still not quite, right. Go to 1/12, and it's like putting the thingamajig here, kind of like a ruler in it, and just sort of like setting it where some of the most bands are equally the same level, and then some bands are a little bit, but eventually you just run out of PEQ filters on the Behringer DCX. I don't want to use the Storm Audio's, because if I adjust any of the actual bands, anything coming on the LCR outputs, if I want to use 5-screen matrix backup, the signal would be all skewed up. It's got to be in phase and frequency and so forth. The bands going across the screen speakers, they got to be all in synchronization, and you got to have enough bands. Even if I go back to using the DEQ, there's still just not enough bands there to cover that. That's about how many bands have I got there? Let's see. Anyway, I did a count there, moving this along. Hands a little bit cheery. I think there's about 36 bands. 36 bands. Forget about it on the DCX. It only goes up to 9. And even the Storm Audio will only go 20 bands per, on its, and then you get a little bit more if you use the Dirac Live or Live Genesis or whatever the bloody hell the thing's called. But I can't use that. I can't. If I was someone else, different, I probably would. But that person if I was different, I'm not going to know anything about 5-screen speaker, 70mm STDS. I wouldn't know anything about that. I'll be completely clueless. Anyway, so I got to use a few Q bandwidth and such, because as I move the frequency along with get a little gain cut, and then I can see some of the and I think, oh yeah, these few bands here, I can just jiggle the frequency dial in between and bring these two bands down equally, and then it's the Q bandwidth and such which will go over to the neighboring frequency below or above. And yeah, it's a juggling act, and then it's just getting the whole thing consistent. And yeah, when I sort of get it that way, guess what? The sound coming from the screen for directional sound, it is pretty damn good. But if I were to put the microphone way back here, it's a little bit more than that. The microphone's up close, so even if I move the microphone slightly a little bit the left, a little bit right, the frequency band, and then testing until you're literally blue in the face with the whole thing and think, why am I into this hobby or this whatever, you know? And you got to test this on every loudspeaker, going from one to the other, because no loudspeaker is perfect. And that's why it needs, at the end of the day, it needs a very complicated, complex electronic equalizing system to get the bands adjusted. If I used, for example, if I change that to 1/3 octave, it's just smooth in there, it'll look like that. And that's not going to show me a whole lot with resolution. It's like looking at something with that's, you can see that's clearly focused, and then you put a little bit of water in your eye, and then it just becomes unclear and you can't make out what the heck it is. It's like when you go to eye tests and you see letters from a distance, and you know, there's a lot of things to sort of come into play, where the environment, what lighting there is in the room and such, because image and light is what makes detail. So anyway, I can't tell anyone to, you know, if you want to put your microphone in the middle position all the time and you think there's still something just not sounding right, I know what a soundtrack sounds like, and I know there's detail there. But if the frequency bands are not exactly balanced out correctly, you're going to miss out on certain things, because you'll get audio frequency masking effects, or your ear picks up that type of frequency all the time. It's got to be, you know, and it takes a little bit, you know, to it, you know. So usually I use multiple microphones, but I'm just using a single USB one at the moment, because all my microphones are over here and here and there. So even if it's on 1/3 there, you know, it's still like, it's like a roller coaster ride. It's supposed to be flat because all those sine wave tones are flat. They're equally all the same level. That is, in the amplifier it is, or in the processor, or in the sound generator. But once it gets to that, once it gets to a speaker, it just goes all over the show, and it's just like, well, why is it like this? I paid $1 million for these speakers and it looks like this. My goodness. I suppose those idiots will go and buy $1 million equalizer. So it depends on what I feel comfortable with, you know, and then juggling the frequency act to be a nice fine flat performance. Takes effort, takes a little bit of time, patience. I'm just a little bit pissed off that there's just not enough, you know, one, I don't like to have stacks of FBQs. FBQs are not bad. They're pretty damn good. You can go real narrow band Q bandwidth on those. Very, very narrow to get problematic bands. But, you know, it's just having stacks of these, which I did once before, and I had a pretty decent frequency response over the HF horn. But it's having stacks of these, and there's just not enough rack space. And then you can just dial in some of the frequencies, and it'll go up to 20 band. And if I wire or connect channel A into channel B, with the output coming from channel B going into the Behringer DCX or such, or it would be the other way, it would be the output of the DCX HF going into the FBQ, and I'll just wire it as a into channel B, and then that'll give me 40 bands. And how many did I count along there? 36. That's more than enough to do the HF horn. More than enough to get all the, but like I say, going closer resolution, because it's like astronomy, and you get a better telescope, you better lenses, optics, and you get more detail. So if I go 148 and change the smoothing to 148 there, I get a little bit more band. It's still more or less, and of course, is that no smoothing? 148 there. Yeah, I'll change that and change it to no smoothing, and the bands are like that, and it's getting all those all at the same level. If sometimes, I mean, you got to be careful with using high frequency boost. One, if I use, which I've got a little bit on there, and if it's not going to hurt my ears, because some of those upper high frequencies, they're going to sound like that by the time that you hear them. You think you can hear them on your ears, but you're not really going to, because you're going to be hearing all these bands down here before you can even hear anything up there, unless you play an individual sine wave tone, or if something happens in a film and it's got one of these frequency sweeps things that you often hear in these movies, and it happens to go, yeah, and it goes up high, and you think, what was the bloody point of that? What are they giving us a hearing test? Anyway, I'm gonna get back to this. I'm gonna get cracking.